today I am so happy to have Leary with me.
Well, thank you, Jen, for having me on your amazing podcast. And I am the author of, I think, 4 novels, a memoir, and now a new essay collection. I've tried being nice.
I think there are a lot of women that can relate with the title. We've tried so hard being nice, you know? And so how did you get to the title and how did you get it started?
Well, the title of the book comes from the title essay this is a collection of personal essays. And in the book, there's essays that touch on, parts of my childhood, my marriage, my, different places I've lived, my passions. But the first chapter is called I've Tried Being Nice. And it's about this kind of passive aggressive showdown I had with a neighbor who involving dogs. I'm a dog freak. At the time we had 4 dogs. And now we just lost one last week, unfortunately. So, but we have a couple of rescues who are a little unhinged, and we don't like when strange dogs come on our property. And so there was a woman who would walk off leash and her dogs would come on. We had this back and forth where we were both trying to be nice. Oh, it'd be so nice if you didn't let your dogs come on my property. Oh, my dogs love other dogs. That kind of thing. Until finally, one day I had it. And the dogs came up my driveway on a snowy day. As I always am, midday in my pajamas, though I'd been up since 5 working. I write in the mornings. I jumped in my car in my pajamas, drove after them because these women are speed walkers. I cannot catch them, not that fit. And when I finally caught up to them, I didn't know what to say. But as the woman came over to my window, like, "Oh, hi," I said, "Look, I've tried being nice." And she literally reeled, but she kind of and like reached for her dog's collar, and it was really satisfying. I never knew the power of a sentence. It was almost like cocking a pistol. Like, it's like when my kids used to say all the time to me, "No offense, but," and you knew what's happened.
Oh,
Followed was going to literally slay you. So anyway, but the book, I do have many other essays in the book, but they all do kind of share this theme of, what made me the way I am, why I so want to have people like me, and then reaching a certain age, which is over 50, happened to be in my 50s, where I gradually, and it's still, I still have to work on it, but I gradually realized I don't have to have everybody love me more than anything on this planet. I'm okay if they are just slightly fond of me, or actually maybe if they don't like me at all. I used to feel very unsafe, but I moved a lot, and I do write about this in my book. I moved a lot growing up. I changed schools a lot. My siblings and I, were kind of, bullied, not, I hate that term is used so much, but all kids bully one another, and we had to really ingratiate ourselves with the other people, and learned how to. And it's kind of what I've carried through into adult life. Short answer, long answer to a very short question.
well, no, that's okay. That's okay. And you talk about so many things in your book that I think people can really relate to. Like, do you still have thoughts of that from before that kind of creep in or?
People pleasing kind of thing. Definitely. I mean, right now I'm gearing up. This book comes out in a month. This is a really fraught time for most authors, I think, but I really do. Well, the truth is, when I usually write fiction, when I have a novel coming out, I'm actually looking forward to sharing it and talking about it at book events and on podcasts like this, other interviews, because there's a story and characters that are, that I've made up and that I've come to really understand and love and want to share. This is about me, and so I feel, again, really it feels very exposing, and I feel a little fragile, it coming out. I don't, these essays, I write about my family and friends. I show these essays. Some of these essays were previously published in magazines or other places. And I always show my family, if I write about them, anything I'm going to publish. And then people who aren't in my family, I change the identifying names and characteristics per order of my publisher's legal name. So the woman we were just talking about with the dog, I call her Doodle Lady, and I say that she has a doodle, but maybe Doodle isn't the breed. But if I said the actual breed of her dog, my whole town would know who I'm talking
Right. Yeah, then that makes sense. You absolutely can't. Yeah.
about. Um,
So, and yeah, you do really expose a lot of deep and personal things in this book, and I'd imagine that was both cathartic and terrifying.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, some of the most kind of, personal essays, or a couple of them had been previously published. Probably the most revealing was the one about, it was in a modern love piece in the New York Times originally. It's about how tennis kind of saved my marriage, and it was hard. So that was published, at least a decade ago. Um, but then it was part of Amazon did a television series based on the modern love column, and Tina Fey and John Slattery played the characters based on my husband and myself. So that was really,
Because we
oh, okay.
talked about him a
Yes,
lot
my
in this.
husband is Dennis Leary, the actor, a comedian, actor, writer, producer. But when we met, he had just graduated from Emerson College. I was a student there. I took a comedy writing class that he was teaching. It was like a workshop. And we kind of, I had a huge crush, and he, I guess, did too. And after this class was over, we started going out. And by that, I mean, we went on a date. He stayed over, and he still hasn't left. He's still here. Like, it went really fast. Really fun. But it's about, my husband and I are happily married today. We've been married. We've been living together. And I don't even like to say this. It makes me sound so old. But I was 20 and my husband was 25 when we started living together. And now we've been living together for over 40 years. So it makes me sound really old, but we are still together, and we're different people than we were when we met. And I think we're better people, hopefully, in many ways. And our marriage is certainly probably the strongest it's ever been. And when I say that, I know that when people say this publicly, they immediately get divorced. It's kind of a jinxy thing to do. But when I wrote that modern love piece that is in this book, Dan Jones, who's the editor, said, what he loved about the piece is many people write about, falling in love, or falling out of love, and, relationships ending. And not many people write about relationships almost ending and then recovering, because, and I got why when I was writing it, it's so painful to go back. I wrote it at a time when that time was behind us a little bit, but it was painful. And when I showed it to my husband, he too found it, he loved it, but he found it really hard to read because it reminded us of this really, really hard time in our marriage. And but when the piece was first published in the Times, the feedback I got from so many people was that they too were, in it. I called it my piece of penguin marriage. It was based on this movie, March of the Penguins. Penguins marry to raise one egg, and then when that egg, for a year they take care of it, when it grows up, then they part and they meet other people. And we felt like that was, our kids were getting to be college age, and we felt like we were just kind of holding on until they went to college, and it probably wasn't going to work out. So it was really, really hard time, as I said. But they've been long out of college, and we're still happily married because we worked through it. So but the piece, I kind of really expanded on it for the book. I wrote much more. Um, it's still a lot about tennis. So I learned tennis in my 40s, and I'm obsessed with tennis. So I read a couple essays. I think, right, I include tennis, but I also write a lot about my dogs, and my, love for, the place, homes that my children, the homes that we've lived in and had to leave or stay in, and decisions regarding, homemaking and raising children.
And so now your kids are grown
Yeah.
and, out of college, I'm guessing,
Oh, yeah.
and, what do you think are some of the good things about being a woman of a certain age?
Well, I do think that one of the biggest thing is this thing. I do think it's kind of has to do with our hormones, and when we're younger, and during our childbearing age, it's important to have the other people, especially the other women, and it's been like this probably since tribal times. We really needed the other people to like us, and for the safety of our children. And then when you're no longer of childbearing age, maybe those hormones that make you regulate your behavior to endear yourself with others kind of go away as they do. And they affect our behavior. And so I think that has part of it where there's no need for it anymore. And that is why I think there's a kind of a trope of the older woman as being like, get off my property, or, but also of kind of being wise, and actually, in many cultures, being the kind of person that people go to for advice. And I love giving advice. No one ever asks for my advice because no one really wants to be like me. I'm kind of a mess, but I give it anyway for free.
In chapter 4, I'm transitioning here.
Okay.
There's some talk about some knitters
Some what?
and knitters
Oh, right.
and some tude with the knitting, some
So again,
attitude.
I
There's
what?
the knitting attitude.
Oh yeah. So this was a piece actually was originally published. Anne Hood has published a couple of knitting anthologies, and she asked me to write a piece for hers. And I said, "Well, I don't really knit. I've tried many times. I'm not good at it." And she said, "Well, people sometimes write them that they haven't." And I remembered the time when I tried the hardest to knit was when I was in London. I went for a weekend in 1990 with my husband, who was a struggling, like aspiring stand-up comic, and we were supposed to go for a weekend. I was pregnant and went into preterm labor. And though we packed for 2 nights, we stayed for 6 months. This woman, this sweet Irish nurse, taught me to knit, but it was so soothing, her teaching me and her, her hands and everything. So I decided to write about that. And the funny thing about that is when that anthology came out, Anne was, promoting it. So I said I'd do a couple book events with her, and I did. But the first one I did, I went, and there was another author who had a piece in the anthology, and the piece originally, I don't think it starts that way in this, but it started with the sentence, "I hate knitters." And I sat and I had to read from it. And it was in this big group, in front of a big group at a bookstore, and they all had their knitting. They were knitters. I didn't think about the fact that everyone who reads this, of course, they love to knit. So it's talked about this like kind of prejudice I have against knitters. Like if I'm in an airport, well, I guess they don't allow knitting needles, but sometimes it'll be in a meeting or something, somebody's knitting. It to me, like I kind of explored that. But the truth was, in my essay, I said it probably has to do with the fact that a knitter sort of saved me with taking the time to teach me this skill that has always been associated a little bit with maternity, right? Knitting, isn't that like another like thing, knitting little
Absolutely.
booties? And that's what I wanted to do. I think I was ultimately able to knit something that looked like a premature baby's belt. It was like one strand of wool. But yeah, so that's a kind of a different tone, that piece. But I liked it. And when I usually write fiction, and so the audiobooks are always recorded and narrated by an actress. But this book, I was the narrator. I went to a recording studio and read them, which was fun. I never knew how long it takes to record an audiobook. It doesn't take that long. But I got really choked up reading this one and another one where that talks about the death of one of our dogs. I was
Oh,
reading along, and then I'd be like, look. And the poor guy who produced it, he was kind of like dry-eyed and looking at his watch, like, okay, can you not do that noise? And just, can we please? And I didn't laugh out loud at any of my things, but I have done that at readings, and no one else laughed. That's embarrassing too. I've cried and laughed out loud at my own things, and nobody joined me in that. So
but you have the feelings behind it, though. I mean, it's not just a book to you. This is you.
yeah, so that's why it does feel vulnerable, but I did get choked up because it's not, yeah, right. If it was a novel about a person whose dog died, or, who had a difficult time with a baby, I probably wouldn't cry in front of people about it when I'm trying to retell it. And it was a long time ago. But so, yeah, it's real. These are true stories. There's nothing in these stories that I've changed except for people's identifying characteristics.
Yeah. So what is another part that I haven't covered in the book that you can tell people a little backstory on?
Well, I have to say I really like there's one essay about when my husband and I decided to take ballroom dancing lessons, and I really enjoyed writing that essay. It's about a more recent thing. This was just happened a couple years ago, and it was hilarious. We were just when sometimes, because I do write, sometimes for magazines and stuff, but sometimes when I'm writing, or sometimes when I'm just actually living, things happen. Then I think, oh, I have to write about this. When we were in this lesson, that my husband was kind of being nice and indulging me by taking, I wanted to go. I don't know how old you are, but I'm at an age where I didn't grow up learning how to really dance in a traditional way with another person. We were just like dancing to the Ramones, like with our head, But when I was always hated when I'd be at a wedding or a bar mitzvah and some old man would come up and ask me to dance, and he'd think, he could like foxtrot me around in front of his friends, and then he'd find out I can't, he'd be like, I'd be skipping in place and didn't know what I was doing. And I said to Dennis, I just want to go out at a wedding and like blow people's minds. That's all. I just want to like, and he was into it. So we went. And then during the first lesson, at one point, this Russian dance instructor, who's won all these trophies and was very humorous. Dennis didn't know how to lead, and so the guy took Dennis in his arms and waltzed him around the room, and it was adorable. And then Dennis like, oh, okay, I get it. So and then he waltzed him back to me, and I was like, okay, great, you've got it. And I went to like embrace my husband, and then they waltzed off again without me. And I was like, okay, I'm worried about this. Very.
All right. Well, thank you again. I appreciate you coming on the show. You're amazing. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you. You too, Jen. Bye.
Bye.